Shalom, Rabbi Yitzhak Levi, unveiling Torah truth on a weekly basis. Thank you for joining us. Let us study Torah together. This week's portion is called Vayishlach, and he sent forth, based on Genesis 32, verse 4 to 36:43. Beginning with Genesis 32 and verse 4, Yaakov returns to the promised land after 20 years in the diaspora. That means away from home. Not once was he sent out of home, but twice. The first time was to Laban, and then we find that he was taken twice by superpower. The first time was he ran away from his brother. He ran away from home on his own. But the other two times I'm talking about is one was from Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, and the second one was Rome. So they were taken as a nation, they were taken to the diaspora two times. And in the Yaakov's case, he was in the diaspora for 20 years by his own volition to save life. So the first time we see was 20 years on his own, and the other two times, one was for 70 years and one was for almost 2,000 years. He was personifying as the father of a future nation. By spending 20 years with Laban, he was foretelling us that the nation that will come out from his loins will be out for 2,000 years. But we know from Scripture that Israel will never be moved again. Genesis 31 and 38. Haran, one of the sons, the brother of Abraham, or the father of Abraham, means Haran is elevated or strong, named after the third son of Terah, and therefore youngest brother of Abraham. Genesis 11, verse 26, comes about 1926 BC. And Yaakov went on his way, and the angels of God met him. How beautiful is that? And when Yaakov saw them, he said, "This is God's second camp," based on his former dream, and he called the name of that place Machanaim. It's like two camps. The first camp was where he slept, and he saw the angels coming up and down, and the second one was he called Machanaim, the second camp. Machanaim is the name of a region that is mentioned from Genesis all the way to 1 Kings. Jacob named the site on his journey from Padan Aram back to Canaan or Canaan. Genesis 32 verse 2. Later, it was assigned to the Levites, specifically the family of Merari, based on Joshua 21 verse 34 all the way to 42. Machanaim was briefly the capital of Israel during the momentary royalty of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, the first king of Israel, based on 2 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 8. And Jacob sent, Shalach, and Jacob sent two camps ahead of him. But as the way that I teach also, I like to reverse words to see what is God showing us there. If you reverse Shalach backwards, it spells Chalash, weak. That means that Yaakov did not deal from strength, but from weakness. Out of weakness. Messengers or angels he sent before him to Esau his brother in hope of reconciliation. The function of an angel or a messenger is to convey a message or to aid in times of trouble. A servant has the same application used by Jacob by sending his man to deliver a message, but also to aid visually. The gifts, a substance that could have caused an appeasement with his angry brother Esau. Malachi 1 verse 2 says, God says, I love Jacob, but I hate Esau. I hate Esau. The character of Esau is flawed. In all of us, there is an Esau and there is a Jacob. Looking at the profiles of these two men, which one are you? Which one am I? How do we view ourselves? Are you the gift giver or the looter and possession taker? Are you a Torah student or a lurking in the shadow and darkness hunter? One who waits behind the bush of opportunity to seize and to kill. Genesis 32, verse 9. If Esau comes to one camp and smites it, then the camp which is left shall escape. Jacob prepared himself in 3 ways. Number 1, he sent a gift for appeasement. Number 2, he prayed and sought divine intervention. Number 3, he made ready for war as a last resort. It is part of our duty to protect and defend what Adonai has given us. Genesis 32, verse 11. Jacob prays, I am unworthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown your servant. The word here that stands out is truth. Emet. Yeshua told us he is emet, truth. And the way, when we consider his acronym of Yod He Vav He, the Tetragrammaton, we break it down to Haya, Hoveh, V'yeh. Yeshua told us he was the first, Aleph. He is the Mem, the middle of the Mem means the waters or the nations, and he is the last. The Aleph represents heaven, the Tav represents earth, and he came from heaven to mediate, to console, and to save the Mem. Mem is Mayim, water, or the seas. Nations in the Torah are portrayed as seas. But also, if you look at M, Aleph, Mem, speaks of Ima, mother. Met means dead. So yes, Yeshua tells us in Matthew, when he's sitting opposite of the eastern gate or the golden gate, he quotes there, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them that are sent unto you. How often have you killed and stoned those that have sent unto you? How often? But I've sent those that I have been like a chicken or like a hen to those people. I've gathered you under my wings, but you are not listening. Behold, I say unto you, you will not see me henceforth till you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So what happens? Yeshua here as Emet is mother. The last 2 letters is Met, dead. Yes, Yeshua as a mother gave her life to save us. Just like Rachel was never buried with the patriarchs in Hebron. She was not. She was left in the middle of the road because her job was not finished. And Yeshua, when he came here and he died, his job was not finished. But he came as a mother for the price of 30 shekel. When a person does you a favor, you feel humbled. The more that person does for you, the more you are indebted, dependent on him or her. The more humbled you feel towards him or her, it is like a debt to the mortgage company or to the bank. It is not yours until it is paid off in full. We have a debt to Yeshua. He gave his life for us. What have we given to him? He does not want our life. He wants us to be alive, but he wants us to walk in obedience like a good child is to his parent. The same is with God. The more he does for us, especially when he delivers us from trials or tribulations, the smaller we should feel. What happens? God made us of the lowest form of matter, dust. And still we walk around like peacocks, walking around. We have big muscles. We go to school, we become doctors and lawyers, and we're big shots. We forget where we came from. I think it's high time we remember that we're just a particle of dust. It is only through his mercy, which endures for all generations, and he chooses the time and the place to intervene. People have come and told me, as I'm from Israel, I was born and raised there, and many Israelis turned from God and live very worldly. And I asked him why. They said, well, where was God when the 6 million Jews were dead? I don't know. Did God make tanks and airplanes and weapons of mass destruction? Did God do this? God gave authority to men. He says, here's the keys to the planet. Now you take care of it. And we're the ones who make wars. We're the ones who rape and mutate and cause suffering and pain and finally death. Why do we blame it on God? Jacob meets Esau. Genesis 33:1. Then Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. He put the maids and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. But he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Verse 4. Then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. He lifted his eyes and saw the woman and the children and said, who are these with you? So he said, the children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the maids came near with her children, and they bowed down. Leah likewise came near with her children, and they bowed down. And afterwards, Joseph came near with Rachel, and they bowed down. And he said, what do you mean by all this company which I have met? And he said, to find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be yours. Jacob said, no, please, if now I have found favor in your sight, then take my present from my hand, for I see your face as one sees the face of God. And you have received me favorably. Please take my gift, which has been brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have plenty. Thus he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, let us take our journey and go, and I will go before you. But he said to him, my Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me. And if they are driven hard one day, all the flocks will die. Please let my Lord pass on before his servant, and I will proceed at my leisure, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord at Seir. Esau said, please let me leave with you some of my people who are with me. But he said, what need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. Jacob journeyed to Sukkot and built for himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the place is named Sukkot. Now remember, Sukkot is mentioned in another place. When the Jewish people came out of Egypt in the Exodus, the place that they stopped was in Sukkot, in memory of their father. This is where their father, the father of a nation, has built booths or Sukkot. Genesis 32 verse 30, before we can return from our place of exile, we have to face our fears, even if it means wrestling with Yeshua. If you believe it strongly, you will win and your name will be changed. Without a doubt. We wrestle against men and we wrestle against God. We are like in the middle. We wrestle against God because we're always trying to justify why we sin and why we come short. We wrestle against men because they're always pulling us to one or another direction. We have to stay the course. So the name change is of utmost. From Ish to Esh. It is well-known fact that fire is friendly and is used by all humans. It never damages, it never kills, it never harms life or property. Right? Wrong. Fire unattended causes destruction and death. Fire, if it is not contained or controlled, will kill and destroy. The same is with Esh, fire. But I'm going here somewhere with this Esh, because that is the name of the woman in creation. Her name was Isha. Aleph, Shin, Hey. Esh, God's fire. God's fire. But also, when you look at this, you read it also with not with a shin, but with a sin. And you come out with Aleph, Se, the Lamb of God. A woman can be fire and destructive, or she can be like a lamb that follows in obedience to the mitzvot of the Torah. Abraham was changed to Abraham. Sarai changed to Sarah. Yaakov, Jacob, to Israel. And Ben-Oni was changed to Ben-Yamin. We must change here and now. That is the visual purpose of baptism. That is what Shabbat is to the days of the week. We must become the Shabbat of the Lord so He can rest in us as we rest in Him. So the week is numbers. Shabbat is a name. Think about that. A name change from numbers to a name. So the Shabbat is number 7, but it has a name. It is Shabbat. The first 6 have no names. They're all numbers. Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, Revi, all the way. But Shabbat is a name. There are 3 stages in life. Number 1 is birth to the age of 20. Number 2, age 21 till 70. And the third is 71 till death. There are three stages to change. The one is birth till 13, when we are baptized and declare we know the mitzvot, which is part of the physical. Number two, the age of 14 till 20 is the numbered as the guardian with Israel, and is ready to defend the commands of Adonai with our way of life. That speaks of the soul. While the first one speaks of the body, the spirit, the physical, the second one speaks of the soul. Everything in here is the soul, the stomach, the heart, the organs. But the last one is the most important one. Age 21 to death, walking and teaching others how to conform to the image of Yeshua. That is about the spirit. It's up here. The heart of man is here, between the temples. The third stage, or three stages to salvation. Number one, when we are born. Number two, when we die and resurrect. And number three, when we enter the kingdom of our God. 1 Corinthians 15:50. Flesh and blood will not enter the kingdom of God. Going back to Genesis 33, verse 1 and 2. And Yaakov looked up, and behold, Esau comes, and with him 400 men. And he divided the children to Leah. They are still his children, though. Right? Maybe they're concubines, but they're still his children. And to Rachel, and to the two maidservants. So, look at this again. Number one, and he put the maidservants at their children's foremost. Speaking of the body, he sacrifices the body first wave. Number two, then he sends Leah and her children. That speaks of the soul. That is still not the heart, because the heart is still Rachel. So we see the maidens are the body. Leah, yes, she brought me sons, but she is only the soul. But when it comes down to Rachel, Yosef speaks of the spirit. Zeros don't count in the Torah. So you have 4 or 40 or 400, whether it is 40 years in the wilderness, or 400 soldiers with Esau, or 400 soldiers with Abraham when he went to rescue Lot. The number is 4. So we have the 4 books of the Torah, 40 generational, 400, the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Tav, and it begins with Aleph all over again. The covenant with Abraham began 400 years ago. It is coming to the end. Yeshua is the Aleph, must return to start it all over again, but this time Aleph will endure for eternity. So yes, like Passover is number 1 in the cyclical year. So if you count from Passover, which is Nisan, to Tishrei, you count 7 months. You start from Tishrei as number 1, and you come to Passover. Now Passover becomes number 7. You start as 1, so we see the full cycle. Again, it speaks of Yeshua making man, becoming the father of this man called Son of Man or Son of God. Okay? Later on, we find that the very Son that Yeshua created now becomes the father of the Son. That is portrayed in Pesach and in Sukkot. So, I know it's confusing for you if you haven't heard it before, but just take what you can. Take it in. Hope you're taking notes. Go over it. God willing, if we meet again next year, next season, we'll go over it again and things will become even easier. Tav, the numeric value for the last Hebrew letter, is 400. It's made up of 2 letters, the Resh and the Nun. The Nun. The Resh is the head, and the Nun is the fish. Okay, so Tav, the very last letter, is numeric value 400 or 4. Speaks of Torah. It's a number of force, of power. It symbolizes the saf, or the threshold of humanity. 4 or 400 is a symbol of the innumerable. It is the numeric value of the last Hebrew aleph bet. You know what comes after Tav? Aleph all over again. Jacob prepares for war. He prays and he sends Esau gifts, hundreds of heads of sheep and cattle to appease him. It reminds us of how we are to approach our God. We know serving God is to be prepared for war at all times. Because we are, God is known in the Torah as Adonai Tzvaot, the God of the armed forces. And we are his sons, we're the guardians, we're the soldiers of God's kingdom. We're to be always ready for war because we do not fight flesh and blood. We fight spiritual warfare, an enemy that cannot be seen, but he can see us. Number 2, we are to be in communication with God at all time through prayer. And number 3, and we are to appease him with our gifts of obedience, tithe, offering, and yes, also our talent. So time is of utmost, and talent along with our tithe and offering. Proverbs 21 verse 14, a gift in secret pacifieth anger, and a reward in the bosom pacifieth strong wrath. How are we instructed to appease the wrath of God? With gifts of sacrifice. Even though our tithe is a debt to God, yet it is received as a gift to God, and it appeases him. That night, Jacob takes his family and possessions and crosses. Israel, it seems, always runs in the night as he did. When I speak of Israel, I speak of Jacob. Number 1, coming out of Egypt, Israel, Jacob is running for their lives on the Exodus. Number 2, now he crosses the Yabuk River. And the last is Benjamin was the only of the sons who did not bow down to Esau. Yeshua is the 12th son. He was told to bow to Satan, but he refused, saying, man shall not live by bread alone, and neither should we. Until next time, shalom, shalom.